Hello, Brick Sculptors, and welcome back to Brick Sculpt. This is Chris, and today is assembly day. I've got all four sides put together. They look pretty ugly on the backside with all this mix of colors, but that's not what matters. What matters is the front side, and they all look really good. It's the first time I've had four solid white sides all put together ready to assemble. Now these are quite tricky, I'm expecting, to stick together. So we will see how this goes. And you have to make sure you get these lined up the first time, because if you mess up, these are really challenging to separate. And we'll see, I'm not too worried about these first sides, but the last one, getting it nice and tight could be difficult because I have no access to the inside when I do that last one. So I have one side on. These do line up nicely. All right, two sides on. And our top. Hopefully this will just fall right into place. Oh boy. And this is the problem. When the plugs go, you have nothing to push on to get them back in place. And I think with that one being on the end, maybe I can take my star-spangled knife. Oh boy. Yeah, this is what I was worried about. Shoot. How do I access that inside? And once this whole thing is built, you really have no access to anything on the inside of this. I gotta find something long to push that down with, so I will fix that off camera. But I do now have a four-sided obelisk with perfect corners. Now we gotta work on the top and the bottom. Okay, so sides are on. There is a little bit more work to do there. Let's go ahead and talk about the top and the bottom. So I made up a little replica of what the top of the obelisk looks like, so we don't have to work with that massive structure. But this is what we have to work with. These outer portions angle. It is mildly illegal in here, but I don't care. My build, my rules. And now I need to fill this in a way that I can attach my top. So I'm going to show you how I think I'm going to do that. This is what I came up with, and I've got a couple of these 2x2 round plates. They have the Technic axle hole in the middle, and then I have a few of these Technic plates that have holes allowing an axle to pass through. The bottom one is solid, so it will stop the axle there. And then I just put a couple brackets on it. Now this isn't going to be totally legal because these walls technically are slightly angled, but it is very slight and I think it'll work just fine. So I'm going to put this piece in here. I'm also going to have some filler blocks. And these are just going to go on the outside to give it a little added support. They won't actually be attached, but they'll help attach these walls and make the whole thing stronger so it doesn't shift. So basically these ones are going to go in first. And they're just going to slide right in between like this. I could put a tile on top if I want, but it's not totally necessary. Here I can pull one of the sides off and insert my top plug. And there we go. We have an axle hole right in the middle. Now the top just needed minimal modification. Just change some of the bricks in the middle here to put a round with an axle hole in there. And there's my Technic axle. And this should slide right together. Top done. Let's talk about the bottom. Now the bottom is a little bit more tricky because it's much larger and it needs a lot of support. If this doesn't have a good connection to the base, the whole thing will risk falling over. And this is basically a replica of the bottom of the obelisk. Again, I wanted to get a size that's workable and easy to show on camera. So I made this up, and this is what I came up with. Now let me dissect this a little bit and show you what's going on here. So these gray portions are going to integrate right into the existing sides of the obelisk. And then we have some snot pieces here, 1x4 brick on top, and then these stuck underneath. And then I just made this platform. And I've got various plates and things just designed to hold this together. These two red ones have the Technic holes in them, allowing the axles to pass through. And I do have some plate axle holders on top here, all stuck together by one plate. And that's going to be kind of the foot of the structure there. So these white ones are going to stick underneath, the tan ones on top. And I will have to adjust the inside of the obelisk just a little bit because the plugs I made do come out a little bit here. So I will need to play with that, but I've already got an idea how to fix that. And I think the structural strength of this portion is much more important. So that's what I'm going to work around. So there's my plug for the bottom, and it does fit that diameter. Let me go ahead and show you how we're going to put that in. So if I just unhook a few of the hinges here, the nice thing about this design is I can kind of just pull the sides apart. Although once these are all connected, they're quite difficult to pull apart. That obelisk, I had to disconnect it once, and I'm going to have to disconnect it again. That's what we're going to talk about next. It's a lot of work. A lot of work to get it apart because it sticks together really firmly, and there's just a lot of connections there. But we'll talk about that next. So this is just going to plug in just like this. We'll connect the sides. Oops, put that one back in the wrong position. You do have to kind of disassemble a lot of this to get this in. And there we have our base in. And this is really sturdy. Now to connect it to a base plate, this is what I came up with, at least for now. I'm going to have a base built up, so I'll have some room to work with. But these were the most sturdy thing I could find. You've got the Technic axle hole, and you got that nice 4x4 footprint on each one. And the studs will connect as well as the axle hole, giving it a super firm connection there. And this is super solid. I don't think this will have any trouble holding the weight of the obelisk and keeping it from falling over, especially on a bigger base. So the last thing we need to talk about before I put all this together is back to the obelisk. Now the obelisk looks really good when you're gentle with it. When you're not, this happens. Some of these plugs are pretty easily pushing inward. And some aren't. The bottom ones are stronger for sure than the top ones because as it gets thin, it gets harder to support. So I am going to pull this apart again. I'm going to rework some of the backings on these plugs. And then after I do that, this should be ready to fully assemble. So let me go ahead and try. Okay, here we go. I got the whole thing taken apart. I spent a lot of time reworking these inner sections. You might not be able to tell, but this spine on the back sits a lot higher, and I've got a lot better connections throughout here, and it makes the other side much more rigid. So hopefully, when I reconnect these, I won't have any panels popping in. It gets really tricky at the top because there's not a lot of connection space up here, but I did find some good methods for holding this all tight, and especially here on this one, because of the overlap here, I made this little plug that sits underneath the piece that holds the top cone. And right here, you have to be careful because if you build this up strong, it starts to hit the inside of the next one. So hopefully everything goes together just right, and we can make an obelisk out of this. So let's go ahead and put it together. And this is what I'm talking about here. You can see how this just barely fits. And that's why I went to a skinnier one here than here. And then I've also got my base plug ready. I added a plate on top here just to make the whole thing more rigid. Well, we got two sides together. So far, feels pretty good. Getting this top portion to connect is kind of difficult. Yeah, and this is where we start to kind of lose the ability to see the brackets connecting. So I really hope they're getting nice and tight in there. Like I said, once you get this thing put together, it's really solid, but getting it put together is quite difficult. All right, top's assembled, bottom is assembled. One last side, hopefully it goes in smooth. And you see these sides fall apart, but this will all be fixed once they connect to the bracket, so I'm not too worried about that portion. It's the inner plugs that are really challenging. And we're just going to slowly pressing on these outsides, work our way up, hoping all the plugs stay where they're supposed to. I mean, that's pretty darn solid. This thing weighs so much. I'm going to go ahead and go to the other table here so I can get you a better shot and see the full thing while I stand it up and put the top on it. All right, well, the obelisk is fully assembled and upright and functional, and it's absolutely beautiful. All four sides fully solid. The plugs are holding in secure. It's incredibly strong to that base, and I couldn't be happier. So thank you guys for taking this journey with me. This journey will still go on. We're going to have to build a base for this thing, and I still got to find a white top for this. I got to figure that out still. But for now, thank you guys for all your support, all the comments, all the effort you guys put in on the Discord server has been great. And that's all I got for this time. And we will see you next time.